Yeah. And so he is right. You know, it is a quote unquote hot mess over in Africa. That is true. And during the fourth lecture, we'll get into that. But you're right. A lot of you guys, you know, about 7, 8 of you guys raised your hand. You said what you thought about Africa when it comes to your mind. I'm going to give you an African proverb that my mentor once told me. He once said, when the lion's story is told through the hunter's mouth and seen through the hunter's eyes, he is almost always the villain and almost always dies. You guys ever seen The Lion King?
Yeah.
Wonderful story, right? You know. Yeah. Now imagine if, you know, there was a negative version of that, right? It was told through somebody else's eyes. Then of course the lion would probably be bad, right? What if I said that lion was you? What would you think then? You would think, I'm not what? Bad. I'm not bad, right? I'm not evil. Well, that's what's happened to our history. There are people who have told our history, who are not of our race, who are not of our cultural persuasion, and they convince you of basically mythical things that aren't even true once you actually dig and find out, just like all the other scholars and archaeologists did. And once you find that out, you'll realize that, yeah, someone is telling our story and painting a bad description of us. The terrible, damaging part is that we believe it as 10, 12 years old, 15, 18, 25, 30, right? And so history, you think about history in school. Why is history important? Because history is the template that holds even the smallest parts of your story. Your people are your story. They carry the traits of your greatest potential and your most fatal weaknesses. A lot of times when you want to figure out where you're going, first off, you always want to figure out what? Where I'm at. That's something that we as human beings always do. You know, we want to figure out who we are, so we don't look forward, we look backwards. Not where we're going, but where we were. That's one way to find out who you are. Oh, you want to know what I'm like? Well, talk to my dad. Talk to my mom. What's my grandma like? What is she like? What's my grandpa like? Boy, you sound just like your daddy. Well, who was my dad? Right? And you guys will find out. I remember one time there was a child. I was watching for a little bit while I was in church, and the mother left. Said, "Look here, just hold him real quick. I want to, just go somewhere. I'll be right back." I'm holding the child, and he was eating his food, but he wouldn't swallow it. And I was like, "Okay, buddy, you got to go like this," And he just. I said, ma'am, he's been over here in my hands for like 15 minutes, and he does not eat his food. Oh yeah, I know. You know what? His dad did the same thing when he was about 9 months. Right? And so a lot of the traits that you have and the things that you do are based on people who've come before you. So what does that mean in a racial, cultural context? Well, that's what we're going to get in today. So that's the reason why history is important. This is a friend of mine.
Are you sure?
They used to go to my church. Her name is Ebony Williams. Beautiful girl. One day I was reading my book, Egypt, Child of Africa, by Ivan Van Sertima, and I happened to flip to...
Excuse me, Dr. Matt. Ebony C. Donovan.
Alright, see you later, buddy.
Bye, Donovan.
Oh, that's my man. Everyone say bye, Donovan.
Bye, Donovan.
Thanks, buddy. And the seat is taken.
Is that why you was making that upstairs?
I was making not this upstairs, but also at home. If you notice, what do you notice? Okay, so it is 3:30 in the morning, and I felt that I needed to complete this lecture that I've done for the children. And not just to keep it to, just them anymore, but I really just wanted to share it, with you all, just share it with the world. I felt that it's something that needs to be known, for just the human race, the human family. And so I'm just going to continue by myself here. Just know that the kids really enjoyed the lecture. So if you look at this photo, you'll see that the individual here is from South America, and a person who looks like this individual many years later is from Pittsburgh. And I show this picture all the time to say a common message, and that is that your history follows you, even down to your very genes and appearance. I want to really, it helps me to put a strong emphasis on the fact that our history is important, and that people look at us through the others who have come before us. And I use that picture to convey that. So let's go to move on. This is a little poem that I wrote, just something for the lecture piece, for all 4 pieces actually. If I were to sum up all 4 of these small lessons I put together, it would be in this one poem, and it's just a small poem. It's called "The Greatness That Is to Rise," and it simply goes: one day there was a miraculous people born on the richest continent on earth. They grew and developed their minds, bodies, and spirits generation after generation. They developed by discovery, adopted their wisdom from experiences, adapted by survival, grew through the changes of life and land, built their genius on the patterns of the seasons and the wisdom of their ancestors. These people shared their discoveries and genius with the entire world, and every civilization on earth was touched by their brilliance. Their genius was considered miraculous among all. One day, these special people were betrayed by the very peoples they nursed into greatness. One nation after another betrayed these people. They were stripped of controlling their land and ripped out of the belly of their homeland, persecuted simply for being who they were, enslaved and beaten into labor, and suffered under persecution of racism. Yet after the crucifixion of their slavery, these people show signs of life despite being proven dead. One day, these people will resurrect Earth's great blessing they once were to the world, and rise from the dead of their mental imprisonment, deep in the tomb of ignorance of their minds. So that's just a small piece that I could just sum up in my own, I guess, Christian perspective, you could say, of these 4 lecture series. If I could sum it all up, it would be in that poem. So today we're going to cover just 4 simple areas. One of them I'll really jump on a lot later, and that's the second one. But we're going to be talking about the size and riches of Africa, basically where they live. And also what the people of Africa were like and why. That's the part that I'm going to cover a lot later. First I have to set up the place that they grew up and all these other things that fed into why they are the way they are first. So I'll be answering that later. How they lived and why, and also where the greatness began. A lot of times, a lot of African scholars, and they've done mounds of works. I have a lot of I have a good bit of their books, and they go into everything that the Africans did, throughout the world and also on their own continent. But we don't touch on what surroundings actually gave them the capacity to do that. And that's going to be my heavy emphasis for today, because I believe we can use those same tools to produce the same greatness in our kids. Next piece, where they live. The kids are really amazed by this. We stayed on this for a while. What do you notice in the slightly left corner there? It's the entire United States. And you can see China, you can see India, you can see Eastern Europe, France, Italy, Germany, Spain. You basically get the picture. Where Africans lived were basically a place that's a lot bigger than where we live. And that would make them automatically completely different people. We live on a land, of course. Well, they live on a large land. So I'm trying to give you guys a very realistic view of what made Africans like they are. They live on an extremely huge continent, and basically this is a mother continent, and as you can see, she could still fit all of her babies into her beautiful womb. Africa is also the resource continent. Africa produces almost 50% of the world's gold and diamonds. South Africa is known to have almost one half of the world's gold reserves, located in an area called Rand. If you actually look up Rand Corporation, I heard it, years ago, but I never knew that it was an actual location. It was estimated that South Africa produced 43 tons of gold in a span of no more than 100 years. So all this time, from the beginning of the time all the way until now, we've just started to dig into the riches of Africa, and we're discovering tons of that stuff. In 2008, Africa became the largest distributor of oil. Of course, we know that resources are basically what you're supposed to root your money in. It's supposed to be backed by resources. So you have diamonds, you have oil, you have gold, you have rubber, you have ivory, you have coltan. Coltan is basically an element that's cobalt and titanium, and what it does is it runs basically all of your electronic products. If you were to remove coltan from just about any iPhone or helicopter or computer, you probably would have a pretty difficult time working your technology and machinery because of this precious rare element that's I believe it's only found in Africa. Don't quote me on it, but it's definitely found in Africa, but whether it's only found in Africa, I'm not sure yet. But Africa definitely has it. Coltan kind of reminds me of Avatar when they were trying to get a element called unobtainium. You know how it's pretty much unobtainable anywhere else. Anyway, I don't want to get off on a tangent, but this is what basically generates lots of money. Africa is a very rich and resourceful continent, and the following is just some everyday scenery. Just I'm talking from a million years ago to practically right now. So yeah, that's. Can you imagine waking up seeing that every day? What kind of mentality would that produce in, the mind of an individual? The self-sustaining continent. I'm going to fly through these. I just want you to look at the country and look at the mineral. Country, mineral. Pretty much every country in Africa has some type of copper, petroleum, something that the United States and China and Europe and all the rest of the world can use. And once again, these resources is what generates or should generate lots of money for you. For example, if you need rubber, you probably do need that for tires. And if you have FedEx and you need tires for FedEx, and so you're willing to pay Africa $54 billion a year or something like that to invest a small portion of their rubber raw sources of materials. That's just one. So you can pretty much get the point that Africa is a very self-sustaining continent. If you notice on the right hand corner, the bottom right, I have Muammar Gaddafi, and I found this out during the time after he died, last October, I believe, in 2012. Why he died. I decided to look it up, and I found out that even though he was put into power by the United States, to be a little dictator over Libya, I guess eventually the country and eventually the whole entire continent began to grow on Gaddafi. You don't just end up being a dictator for 53 years and not, start to get some ideas and have the continent really grow on you. So what he did was he decided to go down to South Africa and speak to basically all the heads of state. He had this big meeting, and his idea was, he said, Africa should have its own central bank, its own currency, its own money. If that were to happen, he was going to automatically take that money and back it by resources, basically what currency is supposed to be backed by. Only problem is, America didn't like that. China definitely didn't like that. And Europe sure as heck did not like that at all. Because their currency is backed by, nothing. And it's really invested a lot in, Why? Because of its resources. So, if Gaddafi would actually do that, it would basically make, Africa a first world stage country overnight.